Well, let me thank the joint presidency of both the Academy for the Sciences and Academy for Social Sciences here, and all of you on the tribune. And I wish to thank members of the Academy, Sciences and the Social Sciences, and I hope my lateness is not the reason for your keeping vigil tonight. Today is a Sunday, but I don't think you would be keeping vigil on Sunday evening, just on an occasion like this. Nevertheless, I'm very grateful for this opportunity, to be in your midst this evening. I tried, indeed, when Monsignor Sorrento told me about this meeting before I left for Mexico, I tried to come back earlier. Actually, I tried to leave on the 13th instead of the 14th. And then they told me that in Mexico, on this weekend, there's a special treat. It's a long weekend. Air Mexico offers cheap flights for everybody to travel out, and so the planes were full, and I couldn't do a change of ticket. When I asked for it, they said, then it has to be changed here in Rome. And when we contacted the office here in Rome, they say, you can only upgrade a ticket, you cannot downgrade it. And so having to buy a new ticket I thought wasn't useful, and I just stuck with it. So very grateful for your patience and was still wanting to do it for me. As you've said, education is a very complex and complicated issue, and it can be looked at from so very many different points of view, just as the issue of poverty that you mentioned can also be looked at various points of views. On the way back from Mexico, I was reading, for example, a study that was done in Fordham about poverty in Christian, Islamic, and Judaic point of views. Okay, and basically what the big thing is that poverty is either voluntary or involuntary. People voluntarily embrace the life of poverty in their search for God, in their search for perfection, and others also suffer poverty because of deprivation, and so it just can be looked at from those different perspectives. The first issue also that you talk about from Laudato Si, it's 6th chapter about educating for ecological citizenship, is also what you refer to and I've looked at. Not knowing what has been discussed already, but just going by the subject matter of education and the use of innovative technological developments to advance education. Let me just briefly share with you, an initiative in that regard. And if after that there are some issues or other questions that come up, then they can be taken, on that level. When in 2003 I was named cardinal, all of Ghana was kind of glad because I was the first cardinal that had ever emerged in Ghana. And so after the celebration, I just thought that it should not finish and end with a celebration, but something concrete should be developed out of that. And so with consulting with a few people, we identified education in Ghana as a thing worth paying attention to and looking at. We have a system that means that government finances basic education, even up to university level for everybody. So basic education is free, and the first degree is also paid for by government and all. Yet, there is an upsurge of a lot of private institutions, private schools, which just means that the government system is not working. The quality of education delivered by the public school system is very deficient, it's not working, and that's why there's a good market for private schools and all of that emerging. Every year, in newspapers, one is used to reading about 0% scores, from students who, at the end of, their basic education, take their final examination to go on to senior secondary schools and all. And so that's where the need was felt to do something in education. We thought that the technology, as you said, exists to be able to do things differently. So we put together a team of university lecturers that took the syllabus of the Ministry of Education, because at the end of the day, the students need to take the same exams to move on. So we took the same syllabus that the Ministry of Education uses and developed 3 types of materials: a facilitator's guide, student's workbook, and then a student, a student study guide. And we then developed a studio, because we thought that people should not leave rural communities to come into cities and towns before they have access to decent education. So the objective was to make education available and accessible to people regardless of the rural environment and everything that they were. And we thought the technology existed to do that. So we developed a studio and recognized that we could use either TV signals or internet signals and whatever to do this. And the ultimate thing was that since all of English-speaking West Africa has the same education syllabus, we thought that at a certain point, we could even use satellite to cover all of those West African countries. So that's what we're working on. The studio has been built, the lecturers put together, and we've had a pilot phase of the project tested out, using the same telecommunication technology, the use of LCD screens, and teachers using that. This weekend, a German technological firm from around Munich is going to be visiting this educational facility in Ghana now to explore the use of satellite for this same part. And we're hoping that with that, at least then, we'd be able to offer, wherever the satellite has footprint, and which is all over West Africa, would be able to offer this alternative form of covering the same syllabus that the governments of these countries require for students to take examination. So we do not consider this as a replacement of the government educational system, but as a supplement, intending to help people, have better education so that they can, compete better and move on then with their education, with the educational method. So that is the example of this, an application of technology to education. It's also very useful that, I talk about rural communities. So a question one asks is, if it is internet and all of that, then one needs electricity, one needs power to be able to do all that. So that takes us into the other thing Laudato Si talks about, the use of solar and the exploration of solar energy as a supply of power in these rural communities. And for that also, we have a group that indeed wants to establish solar panel assembly plant in Ghana, because they felt an offer or the possibility of having dioceses serve as outlets for solar distribution as access to such a market they've never been able to think of. If all dioceses were becoming agent and outlets for solar panel distribution, then they think that they have a market opportunity that one could never have thought about. And for such a market opportunity, they're willing to establish a solar panel assembly plant, and just to be able, and for us, our interest is that with that establishment, we can give these rural communities access to power to be able to access the education the way it is planned. So that is one small initiative about application of modern day technology to making and to facilitating access to education, to people all over. This, for us, is only one point of it. The other thing which the university lecturers and people involved in this have brought up is the very touchy and dicey issue of the medium of education. What language do we use as a base of education? And when that is the case, the point they've always made is that Ghana got independence shortly after India. But in terms of development and growth, there's such a wide disparity. How could India make it, and how, where is Ghana where it is? The next thing is that they compared with the so-called Asian tiger countries or the Asian, whatever countries, and again try to evaluate the difference. One observation that they brought up, which I suppose over here can probably be considered as the medium. They tell me that there's none of the Asian tiger countries which doesn't have its own language, and which doesn't use its own language in education first and foremost before, looking at other foreign languages, English, French, German, or whatever it can be. But essentially, all of these have their own languages, which is the basic medium of education. So the challenge then that comes along with this is, in Africa, it's either English or French. So no country in Ghana, except for Tanzania, which is trying to make this experiment with the use of Kiswahili, no country in Ghana uses any medium apart from either English or French. And this point then is suggesting, does education in one's own language make a difference in how education proceeds or the success of education? And that probably is for psychologists and all of that to look at and to evaluate that. If it does make a difference, then it will mean that several African countries have to find a way of overcoming the various tribal languages and still have a national language which can be used and considered local. Okay, before they use other languages which can become foreign and which anybody can study in. So that's the challenge we find that we come across against. So far, everything we're doing in this project of ours is in English. So whether if at any point we'll have to deal with the medium of education, what language we use, and whether it makes a difference to use a foreign language or whatever language, that's something we've not settled yet. And that's something we're still working on. So I just thought I'd share this experience, and if subsequently there are other issues and other questions that come up, I don't want to drag the day too long for you, for having sat and discussed all of this all day. Thank you.